authority in case someone gets pissy about it.
We're going to get started in just a minute, so please feel free if you want to turn on your video. We will ask you to mute yourselves during the presentation just to reduce background noise. All right, it's 3 o'clock here Central Time, so 4 o'clock for those of you that are following the Eastern Time Zone that's on all the agendas. But welcome. I am Megan and I'm with Camp Quality Michigan, and I am happy to present to you today Dr. Tracy Gaslin, who's both a certified pediatric and family nurse practitioner who currently works in hemophilia and is also the executive director of the Association of Camp Nursing, and she's going to talk to us today about the relationship of health and play. So, Dr. Gaslin?
Thank you so much, Megan, and hello, everyone. It's always, hey, Teresa. It's always good to be back with folks, and COCA is one of my favorite groups to kind of connect with each year. So great to be with you all and have a little discussion around this whole topic of play and health, which seems so normal, expected, average, but I really want to kind of drive some specific points home and help you maybe rethink play and health a little bit in the context of how they relate to one another. So I'm going to share my screen real quick and we'll start here. All right. Okay, so what I'd like to do before we kind of get started is, let's see, can't do that. If you guys don't mind, it'd be really helpful to me to know who I'm speaking with. So if you don't mind pulling up your chat real quick and just tell me, are you a healthcare provider, camp director, camp staff, what brings you, and then who you are, and then kind of what brings you to this session. All right. So if you could share some of that with me, that would be very helpful. I'll just wait until I see some feedback in the chat real quick. So we have camp director, camp manager, great. Medical coordinator, healthcare coordinator, director of operations. Awesome, thank you, thank you. Camp Magical Moments and a counselor, intern. Awesome. Oops. Camp director and a nurse. Wow. Program director. Great. Nursing director. All right. Awesome. This is very helpful to me to kind of make sure I'm speaking to the right audience and sharing some of the best words that we can. So, what we want to talk about today for a little while is just this relationship of play and health. Um, and the key is, I think, if I ask any of you, well, come on. First thing I want to do is thank the partners, and we work closely with a couple groups. One is called the U.S. Play Coalition. If you've not heard of them, they're a wonderful group, deeply invested in play from birth till death. They have an array of wonderful resources and educational information. And I'm going to share different little pieces of their data and material with you today. Also, the National Institute for Play is a really robust site and gives you great information about the value of play and the value added, especially in places like the camp experience. So I want to talk about play, and to get us all on the same page, I'm giving you the definition of play. So this definition comes from Dr. Brown. He's the founder of the National Institute for Play. He's been around forever. He's a physician, but his definition says this: play is something done for its own sake. It's voluntary, it's pleasurable, it's engaging, and it takes you out of time. The act itself is more important than the outcome. So he kind of has multiple variables that he talks about. Play's done something for its own sake. We often ask ourselves, why are those kids playing in the dirt, right? Why is that such a fun thing? Why are boxes and pans sometimes the funnest thing for toddlers? What is that about that kind of play really is engaging to populations of youth and hopefully even to some of us? The other big thing of play is that it's voluntary. It's not a requirement, in essence, to participate in actual play. It's pleasurable. It brings engagement. And I think for those of us at camp, we always talk about that's what camp's about. Camp is about connecting kids to one another, and camp is about connecting kids to nature. And so we're all about this whole idea of engagement, especially where we sit today, right? Where we sit today with the technology implications, where we sit today with previous COVID implications. All of that has played a real role in impacting our ability to engage with one another. And the last point that Dr. Brown makes is that it takes you out of time. If you stop and think about something that you enjoy, you sit down to do that, or you go for a walk and you do that, and you turn around and you think, I can't believe it's 2 hours later. Where did the 2 hours go? In a certain sense, that may be your work role. That may be other things that you do, but in a certain sense, that is an act of play for you. It's something that's very enjoyable. So we like for you to stop and think about the fact that play is just not, hey, kids, go out and be in the yard. Play is something that can manifest itself in so many different ways, in so many different contexts. So I kind of want to get us all on the same page about what is play. And we're going to kind of keep doing a deeper dive into this a little bit more. When we talk about play, there's really two features that we want to really focus on today. The features of play, structured versus unstructured, right? So when we say, hey, we're going to play a baseball game or go do a swimming meet or something else, those are structured play events. And most of the time, there's a goal to that, to win, to excel, to advance. Not a bad goal, but it does have a very structured kind of outcome, unlike what the definition just talked about, which is kind of play for the benefit of itself, just because of the sheer enjoyment of doing that. I recently visited a camp. I'm an accreditation visitor, and I visited a camp this summer to kind of look at their processes. And in one part of their camp, they literally had just a pile of dirt. And it had sticks, and it had pans, and it had shovels, little shovels. And kids were all over that pile of dirt. And you're thinking, that seems like it's not a very good game, right? For camp. It's not a structured, organized, methodical game. Kids were loving it. Another camp I went to had a pretty good sized forest, and they had cleaned all the trees out. So kids could just be in essence, the woods. It was a small kind of wooded area where staff could be anywhere around the woods or in the woods with the kids, and you could see everybody. But they made forts, they stacked sticks, they again played in the natural elements of being in nature. And it was just very exciting to me to see that kind of play. That is what unstructured play is, right? Being able to create and devise and improvise and engage with others, and hey, let's fill the dump truck so we can move this pile of dirt from here to here. There's no real goal to that except the act of engagement, the act of being with others. So we're going to focus a little bit more today on unstructured play than we are structured. Structured is pretty understandable, but I really want us to focus on that and think about that, because sometimes at camp we could potentially get a little too structured. Sometimes we try to run kids from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. and have to run from one activity to the next. We forget the value of allowing ourselves sometimes to just sit at the picnic table and put beads on a piece of string. Sit in our cabins and let the girls paint each other's fingernails. Have just some gentle, fun conversation, connecting with one another. Those are vibrant, and I use that word intentionally, vibrant pieces of a camp culture. The other piece about play is across the lifespan, and that comes from the U.S. Play Coalition, and they're very intentional about talking about play is not just for kids. Play keeps us young. Play allows us as counselors and staff to really enjoy the moment with youth. The statistic is that when children are young, usually between the ages of 3 to 14 or 15, they laugh about 250 times a day. How many times does an adult laugh a day? About 25. We have a 10-time-fold decrease in our ability to laugh and engage and have fun by the time we're adults. We've forgotten how to do that because we have to be so serious sometimes all the time. There's points to be serious and methodical, but there's lots of times, especially at camp, to be generating that laughter with the youth and being involved in play. So we'll focus on these features of play, structured versus unstructured, and then of course across the lifespan. Not only engaging campers, but your staff being involved in that play experience is hugely important. So what's the purpose of play? You say, gosh, Tracy, these are just silly questions. Well, the part if I ask you, you're going to tell me, well, we play so we have fun. And I say, of course we do. That's why we play. And then I say, somebody else says, well, we're going to play so we make friends. I say, by all means, we're going to make friends. We play, the purpose of camp is to play with peers. Yes, it is. Engage, play with peers. So I have fun, make friends, play with peers. All of those are things we would all, I think, agree that we do at camp. But that still comes down to the question of why? Why do we need to make friends? Why do we need to play? You say, it's good for us, Tracy. I'm like, okay, in what way? How do we know that? What does that look like in the context of being human beings who need that point of engagement? So bear with me because I'm a science nut. I'm a nurse practitioner, so you got to hang with me here. But I want to talk to you why play is so important. Play impacts all parts of our brain. We're going to start talking about this lovely thing sitting on top of your head, right? Play impacts most every region of the brain. The left posterior temporal gyrus is impacted. The ventral striatum is impacted. We have the different parts of our brain are impacted depending on the type of humor, all right, that we experience. So sometimes people telling jokes and you getting this play on words joke impacts one part of the brain. Other parts of the brain deal with sensical humor, social humor. Others deal with part of just the visual stimulation of humor and laughter and engagement. So we know, research tells us that our brains need humor, need play and fun and laughter. There's two stages of humor processing, all right? This little screen here, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back. Your pictures keep getting in my way. The first stage is what we call the cognitive humor component. And it involves multiple areas of the brain called the temporal, occipital, parietal brain areas. We call that TOPA, all right? Temporal, occipital, and parietal areas. So see those lit up areas in the picture? Those are all different areas that are impacted by humor and how we process humor in our brains. The second is the emotional humor component, which is the positive feelings we get when we have laughter or mirth, and a reward. So that's the mesocortical limbic area. So there is a spelling test later, so just be ready. In our body, what happens when we have a feeling of health, wellness, laughter, joy? We have dopamine release in our body. And dopamine causes us to feel good about the situation, to feel good about us and where we are. So you have a dopaminergic circuit thing that happens as well within the relationship of what's going on in the brain. And we just don't always think about that. But when you laugh, when you engage, when you have humor, you stimulate all parts of this thing sitting on your shoulder. And it's a really important part of us to keep us young to do that. So why play, right? It changes us at the molecular level, which is epigenetic, meaning it impacts our head, impacts our molecular function of our body. It impacts the neuronal connectivity, means the neurons that are firing around. So you have this whole electrical grid that makes your body work. And the neurons that do that electrical conduction and connect to each other are fired off when we start having fun and start playing. We support social emotional engagement. So it's a behavioral function piece. If we don't have opportunities to engage, how do we have opportunities to learn how to change and to adapt and to figure out that we can appreciate each other and diversity and the differences in who we are? That's the beautifulness of what we are, is our differences, not our similarities in most cases. Play promotes learning. It teaches us to adapt, and we're going to talk a little bit more about adaptation in a minute, because if you ask any parent, their job is to advocate for their child. But in the same sentence, they will tell you, as I advocate for my child, I want my child to learn how to adapt to their environment, whatever that is, whether it's a new school environment, whether they go off to college, whether it's a new sport, whether it's camp. They want their kids to take those opportunities and learn how to adapt and change and grow. And that is going to lead us right into this whole idea of resilience and the value of that. And then, of course, this prefrontal cortex, which is this part of our brain, we develop that when we play as well. So many reasons physiologically that play is hugely important to us. What else does play do? It improves our executive function, meaning it improves teaching us how to connect things together that we may not have ever connected together. So executive function is learning how to learning how to connect disparate things. So, oh, I didn't know that if you did this thing, that it really had an impact on this thing. So when they're filling their truck pile of dirt, and they take the dirt and fill the dump truck up, and then they roll it over and put the dirt somewhere else. Initially, they weren't thinking about the impact of that behavior, but they learned through that immersive, engaged process how those things impact one another, and how if you have the dump truck and you put your hand on the top of it and you put the dirt in, it keeps the dump truck from raising up and falling over, right? The first few times they don't get it right, and none of us get it right the first few times, no matter what we're doing. But after a while, we continue to learn through that repetition as well. We get language growth through play. So kids learn how to communicate better with one another and with adults by the immersion experience, immersing themselves in engagement with one another. So play creates that. Early math skills like spatial concepts, learning about distance from things, learning about, hey, if I run and throw myself in the swing, I could fly through there and hurt my clavicle. If I learn how these different things happen. So these lend to spatial and math concepts. We've talked about social development a little bit and peer relations. We also know it lends to physical development and this whole sense of agency, right? Now, when we talk about sense of agency, it's the sense of, I have the ability to make decisions that impact my life. So we go into camp and we go into the dining hall and you think, oh, we're going to feed dinner. But guess how? Do you ever thought about the fact that if the kiddo gets to choose some of the food they're going to eat, that's important? Is that important? It is. It creates a sense of agency. We all, I don't care who you are, need to be in control of parts of our lives. We're never going to be in control of everything. Your boss at work is going to tell you what to do if you're an adult. Your teacher at school is going to tell you what to do if you're a youth. But there are moments and pieces of our lives we need to have some voice in. And that's exactly what play does. It teaches kids how to have a sense of agency, a voice for those things that really matter to them. So we've talked about why play. Now I want to just kind of spend just a couple minutes on this whole idea of unstructured play. I really want you to hopefully take this concept and back and say, what does our camp look like? Should we consider having more unstructured time? What we know is that there's been this really strong focus on academic readiness. That's in the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, the promotion of structured activities, pushing kids for academic results. And then, of course, all of those kind of very structured things decrease the opportunity for playful learning, because playful learning really is about creativity, spontaneity, thinking about how to do things differently with different things. In unstructured play, you'll see here's what the AAP recommends. The American Academy of Pediatrics says we need an increased focus on 21st century skills, and they're listed there for you. How do we teach kids these skills? We know kids need to perform well academically. We know kids need structure and boundaries for safety reasons. But there's got to be a way, right? And I think camp may just be the most perfect situation where we teach kids 21st century skills. How do you solve a problem? Do we create dialogue that gives them the opportunity to do their own problem solving? All right. So I say, hey, Megan and I are in the same cabin, and for some reason, Megan cut me off and I wanted to go brush my teeth and she got there first and it upset me. Here's a grand little opportunity to create a way for kids to learn to problem solve, to collaborate. In unstructured experiences, they get a chance to be more creative. Even though you'd have thought you were going to string beads on a piece of rope and you were going to make bracelets, you're always going to have kids who do something different. Embrace that creativity. It may be a little bit of a challenge, but encouraging kids to think differently. I'm a nurse. I'm very left brain. I have literally no right brain in my head. I need creative people. So anytime I get around people who are really creative and have just great inspiration, I'm always inspired. And then, of course, executive function, just being able to operate on their own, think about ways to manage situations and just work through their life experience. What we know about health and wellness, so we've talked about play and the structured and unstructured play. Here's what we know about health and wellness. When you talk about health and wellness, about 10% of that is related to healthcare and healthcare services that each of us receive. About 20% of health and wellness is the social and emotional factors. So where you live, your family structure, your support systems, all those social and emotional factors give up a robust 20% of our health and wellness makeup, who you are. Another 30% are your genetics. You can't control genetics much. That's what your lovely parents gave you. So we have to kind of work with that within the context of what our genetics are. Look where the majority of our health and wellness sits. Individual behavior. Teaching kids how to have their own agency, their own self-identity, their ability to navigate tribulation and trials. Camp can do that. Camp is the most unique opportunity. And that's why I think all of us love camp, is that we offer this opportunity to promote this huge component of health and wellness with our populations. You see the picture on the left? That's how our kids look today, right? How many of those kids are engaging with one another? We've moved from this point of analog play. Analog play means there's lots of movement, there's transition of signals, there's relating to others. That's the analog play. We've moved very much to the digital aspect of play. And so look at the differences between the two. Analog is open-ended. Digital is closed-looped. Minds on is an analog. Distractions. every parent will tell you they get concerned. When is the right time to give their kid a phone? When is the right time to allow their child to be on the computer without the parent knowing what's going on? There's so much distraction and enhancements. Even just you get concerned anymore. Parents get concerned about what ads their kids might see on their computer or their phone. And so those distractions are very difficult to manage. And really, are they helpful? And are they really building the character of youth that we want them to build? Analog play is intrinsically motivating. It creates the opportunity for mastery. I rode the horse for the first time, right? Or I was able to get halfway up the climbing wall. We create opportunity for mastery through this analog type of play. Digital play just lacks context. It's usually using time. That's what happens most of the time with digital play. How many of us have heard and have said, okay, you can play the game for 10 minutes. What's the outcome? What's the benefit to the child? It may cause some anxiety, decrease in anxiety for parents and things, and we totally get that. But at the same time, I ask you to think about what's the benefit of that to our youth. Analog play, of course, is easier to socialize. Digital is very solo, very isolated type of approach. And then, of course, in an analog play environment, we have space for adults to engage, right? We need adults engaged in youth's lives in very productive and healthy ways. And one of the best ways adults can do that is by playing with youth. Now, as we talk about playing a little bit, you have to realize that play is for the benefit of itself. Play allows kids to kind of take risk. At camp, we do a really good job of allowing risk, but we manage, hopefully, and mitigate that risk so that it's not extreme harm for people. So camp is a great place where we allow kids to take risks, to try. Anytime you try new things, you're taking a risk. Anytime you drive the car too fast, you're taking risk. Anytime you have new groups of people coming together who don't know one another, you're taking risk, right? We allow for experimenting. It allows for testing in the boundaries. Now, the challenge is we got to hit the happy medium. And sometimes we talk about this within the context of stress. But if we give kids a challenge, let's say they're at school and they're in a class and they come home and they say, it's just so boring. I don't like it because I already know how to do all of that. That's where you have to look at the task the learner can complete without assistance. That's that green area on this scale. That's kind of the kid has a high level of competence, but a very low level of challenge for the most part. On the other end, if something is too challenging, the child or youth will check out. It's over and above beyond what they can do. So that's why we don't give a third grader 6th grade math questions. They're not ready for that. That's why we don't have certain youth doing certain. So we balance that in the way that we hopefully get most of the kids in what we call the ZPD, the zone of proximal development. And we get them in this gray area, that's what you often hear it called, where there's a little bit of challenge requiring a little bit of competence. And those two, when they match up, it's a great learning environment. It's a nice place where kids can grow, they can learn, they can change, and they develop new skills. That's all obviously what we want to happen here. So I want you to think about this, and we'll talk about this in another session tomorrow, about sometimes you can't have too much challenge because it throws the kiddo out of the ability to even think about it, but you can't have too low a challenge because kids are going to get bored. So you got to bring that in, this focus of what does that look like and how do we approximate that so we really provide growth opportunities. Play at camp is something we all love to do, right? It is what it is. It's great. But this slide, I really want you to think about, it's not just playing at camp, it's playing at camp with the counselors. And I can tell you from some of the early research we've done is that kids who had counselors who played with them had a much more engaging, fun, responsive experience than campers who had counselors who monitored them to make sure they were safe, but did not really engage in the camp activities itself. So when we talk about camp, we really are talking about across the lifespan. How do we provide these experiences that allow youth to engage with adults, adults to then encourage and support and mentor the youth within their context of their work, right? We know in all those cases that counselors and staff, their personal health increases when they engage in play, and the campers get a double whammy, a double benefit. Their health improves because we know all this stuff's happening in their brain, and also they get the benefit of the health of the counselor. So they're getting a double benefit when the counselors and the kids engage in this play, this unstructured opportunity to be creative. We have all kinds of kids who come to camp, right? So in any one, let's say this is your cabin and you have these 8 kids in your cabin. You got the kid who likes to create stuff. It doesn't matter if it's mud or food or sticks. There's your creator. You got the other kid with Legos. You got other kids who love to collect stuff. You got the kid who's always telling the jokes. He's got every kind of joke for every day. You got other kids who like to just get out and explore, right? Kinesthetic means kids who like to touch, very like to touch and put their hands on things. They learn by very touchy kind of experiences. And you got people who like reading and storytelling and the creative arts, and people who are kiddos who just want to be in charge. I'm sure none of you have ever had a kid who wants to be in charge in your cabin. We all can relate. And when you stop and think about your camp experience, you can probably think of one of your kids in every one of these categories. And it's beautiful that you bring together this diverse group, because then they can have a really robust impact on one another. At our camp, the first night, we do 2 things. We set rules, meaning the kids set their own rules for their cabin. And then we talk about, what do you like to do? What is really your passion? What do you think you'd really like to accomplish this week? We talk about goals for a specific reason, because it does 2 things. One, it creates a pathway to hope. And hope is the only thing that we need to kind of keep people thinking forward, not thinking back. And then it also allows us to, but talking about goals, understand what a kid loves to do, right? And the jokester may be the kid who wants to be the first one in the talent show. Okay, that's great. At least you can start to get a real sense of who you're taking care of. And that will give you, as counseling staff, leadership staff, the opportunity to really better address things when events and situations happen. The kid who's quieter, who likes to do story reading and story time or whatever, you're going to need to take a different approach with them if something happens, versus the kid who's very boisterous and outspoken and the jokester in the group. So knowing your campers and knowing kind of their personality that they bring, how they like to play, will be hugely helpful to you. And embrace the diversity. The beauty is that all these kids are not the same. And that typically is one of the rules we like to create at camp, is just embracing the diversity of people and what they like to do and their choices for a fun camp experience. Okay, I'm going to pause to the next slide. So we talk about having this diverse group of kids in your cabin or at camp. We know that there's really 2 things. There's really only 2 significant goals that come out of camp: resilience and hope, right? And if you've ever heard Dr. Deborah Gilboa speak, she talks a lot about resilience, and she has a great platform for that. And resilience, when we talk about that word, we always talk about a little bit about the concept of bouncing back. So when we talk about resilience, we say, hey, here's the kid who falls down or doesn't do well in an activity, and then they're able to get back up again and keep going. I will use an example of me. When I went to Girl Scout camp when I was little, we had to get badges, right? And you did all these different activities and tasks. And if you were successful at that task, you got your little Girl Scout badge. Now, everybody was working on their Girl Scout badges. Well, I wanted to get my fishing badge. And the fishing badge required that you threw your rod out there and you hit these little targets. And the targets got further and further away. So you had to hit all the targets, and then you got your fishing badge. And I remember I never was able to do it. I could never hit all the targets. And I was devastated. I was beside myself upset that I was not going to get this piece of cloth that said, I got my fishing badge. Of course, now I'm in my 50s and I still remember that. And so I say, camp will teach us through challenges and through aspirations, who we are and how to move forward through those challenges. And I had a great camp director who talked through that and walked through that with me and helped me partner through this experience of resilience. You can name, all of you can name experiences like that with a camper where they weren't successful or felt like they didn't accomplish what they wanted to accomplish, even if that was not even part of the goal. And you have to walk through that with them. So resilience is really teaching our kids the ability to navigate difficulty, the ability to navigate unexpected or even unwanted type of experiences. We walk alongside them. We teach them how to be flexible. We teach them how to use more than one coping strategy. A coping strategy of getting mad and stomping our feet does not fix the problem. So let's teach a different way of coping. So Tracy, I understand you aren't successful at fishing. I know that must seem really difficult right now. Yes, I'm really mad as the camper. This makes me really mad. I just want to go home, or I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah, it sounds like you're really frustrated, but I want to share with you some of the other ways that we can walk through this so that you go home with a really great camp experience. And that camp director reframed that for me as a youth that I would have never been able to think about. And so we have these unique opportunities to help kids learn resilience, how to navigate, how to get back up, how to keep moving forward. Resilience helps us improves our acceptance of the situation, and most importantly, promotes gratitude. We don't do a good job these days of teaching our kids to be thankful. It's easy to be thankful in the wins. It's harder to be thankful in the losses. But what did we learn through the loss? I can tell you, and all of you, I think most of you will agree with me, that we only learn, we only grow through our losses. We only learn, we only grow through our difficulties. You grow and you learn very little, if at all, when you win the game. So embrace the challenge at camp, embrace the difficult situation, understand that those are the mechanisms of play that really get us to where we want to go with these youth that we're serving. The other piece of play is that it promotes hope. Hope is forward thinking. So when you think about hope, kids who have hope very rarely are at risk for self-harm, because the kid who says, I'm thinking about that, I'm going to try to get on that horse tomorrow, that's hope. Forward thinking is about hope. And so we can create this sense of hope about what's to come, about what we can accomplish, about what we're going to do in the next few days at camp. Those conversations are pretty easy to have and help the kid reframe, again, rethink, pivot toward forward thinking. If you allow the child to say, I messed up yesterday, I didn't shoot the bow and arrow right in the archery range, and I just didn't do well, and all my friends did, that's, we're going to switch, take them from the backwards and move them forward. Sounds like archery was a real challenge. So here's what we think. We can use some of those skills in a different way. So I would like for you to partner with me as we work in this new area in the wood shop and really start creating some different, whatever, right? Tools, activities, using glitter, whatever that might be that you can get the child excited about. So I think there's always ways for us to do these two things, promote resilience and promote hope. Any child who walks away with camp having done these two things, you can call it a super win for that experience for the child, and they will always want to return to that glorious experience and the feeling you gave them at camp. There is a resilience cycle. So I want you to think about this a little bit. Resilience happens when change happens. Now remember this, change always causes stress. Change always causes stress. Whether you change your job, whether you change your degree, whether you change what you're going to do the next day, because change makes us realize that we're going to have to lose something to gain something. So, okay, I'm going to decide to change the activity I'm going to do tomorrow at camp. I think I'm going to go do swimming and not do horseback riding. So that change creates a little stress mechanism, and hopefully healthy stress, but we can lead us to a negative stress if we don't think about this in the right way. But change just says, okay, I'm going to go swimming instead of horseback riding. I then realize, oh my goodness, that means I'm not going to get to go horseback riding. Oh, well, I'm not sure I want to do that. Is my decision right? So now I move from loss of being able to do horseback riding to distrusting my own decision. Is that the best decision? Should I have done that? Should I really go swimming or should I go back to horseback riding? Oh goodness, I don't know. And distrust rolls right into discomfort. Well, now I don't know if that's a right decision. I'm kind of upset about that. Should I do that? Should I not? You can see the person's mind rolling through these stages, sometimes pretty quickly, but there are moments that your kids and staff can get stuck in one of these areas. So they make a change in whatever that is, and then they realize that there's some loss with every change. And then they begin to not trust maybe the decision they've made in the change. If we aren't working with that person to encourage them to move forward, they can get stuck, especially in this distrust and discomfort area, because it's focused on self. And who's hardest on yourself? Yourself. And so they recognize the loss, they begin to distrust maybe their decision. It becomes uncomfortable, and we have to teach staff and campers how to sit with discomfort. So we're not going with the discomfort. But if we really help the person understand now, guess what? The beautiful part of this is that you had a choice, and you made a choice to go swimming. And this, when you go swimming, you're going to get to engage with a different group of people. This whole idea of engagement is not only with other people, but engaging with self in a way that I understand that I've now created self-agency, right? I've created the ability to make a decision for myself that impacts what I'm going to do on a daily basis or at camp. So this resilience cycle is really important. And in the back of your mind, if you can kind of think about it that way, that, oh, my camper is stuck right here. They're stuck in this thought of, well, if I go swimming, I won't get to go horseback riding. I'm not going to get to go horseback riding. Hey, counselor, what am I going to do? No horseback riding? Okay, they're experiencing the loss and the distrust and rolling into the discomfort. Our job is to move them to choice and to engagement again with self and with others. That's really okay, that all of life is about this balancing act of change and moving to a new way and embracing what our decisions are. So I'm going to give you some very simple, hopefully, techniques that you can use to hopefully make change at your camp. Only you know your camp. I don't know your camp structure. I don't know what you do and don't do, but I'm going to ask you to consider these pieces. I want you to consider partnering with your kiddos instead of programming for. Partnering with instead of programming for. Partnering with means, hey, Camper Sam, it looks like you're really frustrated by not getting to go swimming for the full hour. Partnering with, but walk along with me and let's figure out what we can do next that's going to be really fun and engaging. It's always better to partner with, walk along with the kiddo through the emotion, through the experience. That can be physically walking with them along the path as you talk them through how to self-regulate some of that emotional piece. And the partnering really is focused on walking through the emotional regulation and teaching kids how to do that, how to refocus from the negative, right? All of your kids that come to your camps are coming with trauma, right? They're coming from a situation of cancer and illness and lots of things that they just did not want to happen. So they're bringing some of this along with them and maybe not have had the opportunity to learn how to transition through resilience and hope. And we can do that by partnering with them. Sometimes partnering with the kiddo just means being present. Hear me clearly when I say you do not, and most of the time cannot, fix the problem. Teacher counselors, you're not here to counsel. You're here not to fix the problem. You're here just to partner with these kids. And if you've ever had a kid who's been homesick, sometimes it's a matter of you sitting on the bench outside with them until they kind of able to work through that. And sometimes it's just, I'm just going to hang here with you and giving them some quiet time. That's partnering with the kid without really creating a specific program. I encourage you to choose simplicity. When life gets crazy, and the thing COVID has taught us this year, simplicity is a great tool for kids. What we know is that many camps have very robust and elaborate activities, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But in the moment of trying to teach kids some of these 21st century skills, create simplicity. Sit in your cabin and tell stories, or make funny faces, or do beading work, or play cards. I will tell you, at my camp this past year, I did not program in card playing before the meals. That was not on my schedule. That was nowhere even in my realm of agenda. But I tell you, we would do activities and we had great fun outdoors and engaging things. And they would race back to have 10 minutes to play cards before the meal started. And every day they taught me, hey, Tracy, you should think about that. These kiddos enjoy just being together, just laughing over cards, just making a mess with a deck of cards. It was unstructured. It was just for the fun of doing it. And kids loved that this summer, just being together and having that simplicity. Allow for some free time. I think I've talked about that well. Just think about ways that we can bring more unstructured time into the experience. I often get concerned when I hear camps saying, hey, we got to hurry up. We got 10 minutes. We got to be at the next activity. Okay, hurry up. So if you're 10 minutes late to the next activity, so be it. It's camp. It's camp. And your group may decide, yeah, we were going to go on a hike, but you know what? We really don't want to do that. We'd rather do this and this. Okay. Gives kids voice, gives kids a sense of agency, gives kids the opportunity to create their own experience. Invest in conversations. I can't say that loud enough. Have a great opportunity. Ask a lot of the questions. I always say we were given 2 ears and we were given 1 mouth. So hopefully we listen twice as much as we speak. So listen, listen, listen. Ask a question and listen. Nothing to fix. No required outcome. Just listen. We do know that more kids divulge more of their trauma and their adverse childhood events at camp than just about anywhere else. Why? Because you're the first person who listened. You listen to their story. You listen to their life challenge. You can't fix any of that, but you can listen. And really, that's what kids want. Time and again, our research tells us kids just want to be heard. Listen. Cost you nothing. A little time will go a long way with our wonderful kids. I say everyone can be a coach, right? And I think that's really true, because what are coaches? Coaches are actually cheerleaders. You can do this. I'm proud of you. Good job. I know it's rough, but the fear is not going to last long. Cheerlead for your kids. Because if you don't give them the positive attention and you recognize all the positive and great things they're doing, guess what's going to happen? They will do anything, which means negative attention seeking, if you don't provide the positive. So when they help clear the table at lunch, and when they make their bed, and when they're helping a peer, and when they're consoling one another, recognize it, be the cheerleader, be the cheerleader. Being a cheerleader is simple as well. You just got to take your blinders off, and you got to teach your staff, hey guys, when you see something well, say something well. When you see kids saying, hey, thank you so much for picking the towels up out of the bathroom. Such a big help. That kid walks out of that experience with this blown up feeling of self-worth and valued. You just valued them by thanking them for something so simple. We think it's almost not necessary. So be the coach, be the cheerleader. Positive attention is really awesome for our kids. I always say that camp starts with me because I can, whether it's staff, whether it's administrators, whether it's counselors, everybody can do these things at camp. I can take small steps. So if you're trying to get your counselors to do things in a different way, keep promoting the small steps. If there's new language I want staff to use at camp, I put it up on I cut up poster board, and I put up just little pieces of poster board in really strategic places so that they begin to see that language all over camp. I tell them, encourage them to embrace hope. Embrace hope is that forward thinking. I know yesterday was rough, but here's what we're going to do today. Here's what the rest of the week looks like. Let's embrace hope. Let's make peace, right? Teaching kids to make peace with one another. And we are definitely in a societal way of needing peace, valuing myself and being curious. And most importantly, you can do most all these things by playing, just playing with youth out in the natural environment. Love this saying, play is the gateway to vitality, right? How many billions of dollars are spent each year in herbal supplements, dietary pills, every kind of nutritional fad thing, everything to keep us alive longer? One of the things you need to do is play. It's a gateway to vitality. It's uniquely and intrinsically rewarding for each of us. Creates optimism, makes perseverance fun. You know, if you're playing a game with others and you got to get the egg on the spoon to the other end of the trail, we're going to keep trying till we get it done. It promotes perseverance in a very fun way. Leads to mastery. Our immune system gets a bounce. We learn how to be empathetic to others. We learn how to be good winners and good losers. We get a sense of belonging and community. And again, what do our kids need now? A sense of belonging and community. People who love them no matter where they are and whatever their situation may be. So I love that unstructured play across the lifespan is such a vital part of who we are. So these are my final words. Here's what I would ask you to do. Work in some unstructured time into your camp schedule. Think about, pull your schedule out for next year and say, how can we work in some simple unstructured time? Teach your staff 2 to 3 consistent positive affirmation statements. Post them. 80% of us are visual learners. 80% of us need to see something in order to get it and to remember it. If you tell me, I'm not going to remember. I have to see it, and I have to see it again, and I see it again. And I hear it from other people. When other people start saying that, I get it. If I say the statement, it's our pleasure to serve you, I bet most of you immediately know what I'm talking about. That is the Chick-fil-A statement. When you get your food, every single time they say, it is our pleasure to serve you. That is, everybody knows that's connected to Chick-fil-A. It's their motto. What's your motto for your camp? What do you say all the time? What are those words that you want kids to walk away and go, oh, that's what we say at camp. Our camp, our language is, everyone here is safe, loved, and respected. Everyone here is safe, loved, and respected. And we drive that home through them setting their own goals at camp. And then when something happens, an event happens, kids have disconnect, there's a fuss or a squabble, we go back to that. We say, hey, everybody here is safe, loved, and respected. How did that experience make us all feel? And we talk through that, right? Identify ways to get kids in that zone of proximal development. What are those ways we can create challenge and competence and bring them together so it's a great opportunity for growth? And then identify the value of staff health and well-being. Your staff are critical to this process of creating a health and wellness event at camp. Your staff need to play. All right. Right on time. I left a few minutes for questions.
Doing good, Tracy. Excellent. Thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Sure.
Anybody that's on here, if you want to come off mute and ask Tracy a question or type it in the chat, whichever, would be more than welcome. I know Tracy will take any questions you have for her.
Go ahead.
I have a quick question for you, Tracy.
Yeah.
We have our kids camps, we have our teens, and we have our young adults. And obviously kind of the message that I'm hearing you say is that this is important regardless of age, but at the same time, there was a lot of focus on our kids. Are you seeing any notable differences that we should keep in mind when we are starting to look at our older populations, our teenagers and our young adults?
I'm assuming, Jen, you're talking about like the mental, emotional, social health components.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And so we call that mesh, in case anybody doesn't know that language, mental, emotional, social health. So we call that mesh. And yes, we know from research we've done this summer that the challenge that was identified in mesh was not in campers, right? All campers, for the most part, were pretty resilient, robust, totally thrilled to be together with their other peers. The challenge were in older campers and staff. And they really struggle with figuring out how to manage and self-regulate in this camp environment, whether it was really truly fear of COVID or they just have been so long from engaging with others of similar age and ability. There's so many variables that play into why they struggled. But I think really starting with staff is the point of where you're going to really make the most impact. We're doing a lot of work right now. I'm working with 2 different groups of camp directors who have so lovingly volunteered their time to help me. But we're working with 2 groups of volunteer camp directors to outline some really important mesh tools prior to camp that camps can use and during camp to help us with staff and campers and teens, and sometimes junior counselors, if you have junior counselors or CITs, to help them begin to figure out how to do this. And they've got to be able to work on themselves before they can really know how to translate that to others. So yes, we are working on those pieces hard and fast. Our mesh working groups are going to sunset at the end of the year, and we're going to hopefully release some of that, a good deal of that mesh tools, resources, activities, the beginning of the year. So yes, work on your staff, because they're going to, as you know, whether it's mesh, whether it's COVID or not, it doesn't matter. They're going to make or break your camp. They are the eyes and ears and voice of what the kids experience. So if the staff have a good time, your kids will have a brilliant time, but they've got to be on board. And so it does require a lot of training. I know this last summer, many camps had to hire staff much younger than they would have typically hired or volunteered, whatever that would have been. Some camps hire, some volunteer. And they couldn't find staff. So they were having kids who were 15, 16, 17 be counselors because they could not find staff. Now, a 15-year-old is still a camper in most of our camps. So how does that look? How do you transition that person to go from, I don't even know who I am, to now I need to be responsible for all these other youth? So we know there's a lot of pre-work we can do before people get to camp. And those are some of the things we're working on diligently right now and trying to make sure we create those resources for groups like COCA.
Thank you.
Sure.
Tracy, I got a question.
Sure.
Do you have any suggestions on getting staff members on board with the unstructured time of play? Our camp has several people that are former Boy Scout leaders, and the Boy Scouts program is very, very structured, and they feel that if they're not in an activity from morning till night, then we're failing. Do you have any suggestions on how to get them on board of actually enjoying free time?
I would say I would encourage you to share the slide that I showed you about the 21st century skills. And for me, it's typically about revisiting what are your camp goals. Now, most of us can recite our mission statement, but how do we really get at that mission statement? If your goals, ultimately every camp's goal, if I walked you through this long enough, I would get you from our goals are having fun and meeting friends, but the goals are is that you're developing resilience and hope through the friendships, through the playing, and we're using and hopefully developing those 21st century skills. So what I would come back to is to talk to the staff early on about the goals. Here's what the goals are, because if people don't know where they're headed, they're going to keep doing what they've always done. So I say, if the goal is resilience and hope, here's what we know that best drives some of the ability for them to do that. Figuring things out on their own. If we figure it all out for them, there's no buy-in from the camper. And the best way to get campers to have a voice is to give them some time where you say, do what you want to do. I mean, yes, we're all talking realistic boundaries, but here's the classroom, here's the table, just stuff. What do you want to do? Every kid will pick up something different. And that's, again, appreciate the diversity of that. So yes, I totally get structure. People will tell you structure. We do structure because it's safer. There's less risk for people getting hurt. I can show you data both ways because unstructured time is not let kids run wild and do it all over the camp and you don't know where they are. That's not at all what we're talking about. We're talking about unstructured coordinated experiences, right? Coordinating an event for kids to explore and learn. It's kind of like what I shared at the beginning. These people had cleared a little patch of their woods, probably as big as one room. You could see everybody, but there were trees. And guess what? Kids had sticks and they banged on the trees and they built little teepees and they stuck them in the dirt. I mean, there was no rhyme or reason to what those kids were doing, but they were having a blast. If you're standing there and watch them, you can tell they're having fun just by the emotional interaction. But you're like, what are they doing? That's okay. There's no goal. And we're very goal and academic driven in this country. There's got to be a moment where kids don't have to have a clearly defined play goal. Play is for the benefit and fun of itself. Did that help at all?
Yes, that I agree 100% with what you're saying. I tell people always at my work, it's like they always ask why I'm laughing. It's like because I like to have fun, and I'm the only one that can control that. So
exactly, and that we all know, and I think there's several camp directors and leaders here. All of this comes from the top down. Unless you embrace it and you kind of reinforce the value of that, it's never going to happen. I tell my group all the time, we're going to have fun. I'm the camp nurse at camp. I'm not the camp director. But we've got to embrace an opportunity for our 7-year-olds to figure out that playing with the water hose is just the greatest thing ever made. I mean, we have an afternoon of 2 or 3 hours where it's just a water hose and some sponges they fill up with water and they chase each other around in a field. Whoopee. I mean, really, the activity itself seems so simple. And that's exactly what it is, simple. Then the kids create the fun. And then guess what? They get to splash the counselors and they get the counselors wet. And that's just even the best cream of the pie, right? To get the counselor wet and the counselor jumps right back in. So creating those moments of just spontaneity are just brilliant. And we often think we need more for our kids to do. No, we don't. No. When you go out with a friend, you go out to have a cup of coffee and to have conversation and to connect. Kids need that too. Kids need that too. And we all need downtime every day. If we schedule them from the 7:30 flag raise until the 9 o'clock at night, by day 3, I can give you evidence that shows we have more illness and injury starting day 3, 4, and 5 in these highly structured camps because kids are tired, staff are tired, and when staff get tired, they don't pay attention. And then that's when injuries and illnesses happen those last days of camp. Never the first 1 to 3 days. We're usually pretty good. And especially if your camp's longer, it gets even worse as the time goes along if we don't provide some downtime.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions from anybody here before we wrap up today? Perfect. Just want to remind you guys, this is a continuing education event. That Tracy or any of the event planners had no disclosures to let you guys know about. There is a survey that you will need to fill out to get your continuing education credits, and I will put the link to it here in the chat. So make sure that you fill that out if you'd like your credits. And have a wonderful afternoon.
We're going to have, Megan, can I just say, tomorrow we're going to talk about the mental work of camp, which is going to be very closely tied to this topic. And we're going to talk about the challenges and the mental work of doing camp in a way that does a lot of the stuff we just talked about tonight. So if this is what you're interested in, come back and we'll connect tomorrow at 4 o'clock.
Excellent. Thank you, Tracy.
Sure. Have a good night, everyone.